the mission boundaries changed a lot when I was there. Like in my when I got my mission call, there's like a little booklet that kind of has your mission boundaries and a map and stuff. And so when I got into my mission, the boundaries were different than that initial booklet, because like I came in like the beginning of July into my mission, and so we were getting a new mission president and new boundaries, and like right when I came in. So so when I went in, the boundaries went up to went all the way up to Star Valley, Wyoming, and then down through Idaho, and then down through Logan and Ogden, and the southern part was like Clearfield, Syracuse, and like Morgan, kind of on the east part. So that was kind of the boundary right there. And then obviously there was like the Great Salt Lake, and then kind of the eastern border was like Huntsville, and then like Cache Valley right there. And so that was kind of the boundary when I first got in. And so a year later, they chopped off Soda Springs, Idaho, and Star Valley, Wyoming. And so we only had Preston and Malad in Idaho, and then we went down same borders in the south, like Syracuse, Clearfield, right by Hill Air Force Base. And so now, actually, there's a Logan mission and an Ogden mission. And so if I remember right, the Ogden mission boundaries now go down to like Kaysville, like North Salt Lake, and Bountiful. They cover those, and then they go all the way up to like Pleasant View, just south of Brigham City, and then Brigham City all the way up to Preston and Malad, Idaho, and Logan and stuff. Like that's the Logan mission now, if I have that right. And so that's how it is right now. So like I served half my time in like the current Logan mission and half my time in the current Ogden mission. There's a lot of members. Depending on where you are, there's like more or less. Like my first area was in Syracuse, so it was kind of by Kaysville, and that there were so many members. There were tons of members. Like we covered 2 stakes, and I think that's like 20. I think we had like 21 wards that we covered, so we covered 2 stakes, and it was nuts. And it was pretty, as far as like activity goes, it was probably like 75%-ish, so it was pretty good. And so that was in great contrast to like Huntsville, kind of on the eastern border, where it was like the whole, so we had the whole valley was our area, and it was probably like 50% LDS. Like half the people living in the valley were not LDS at all. And so it was really interesting. Like different areas had different like percentages of like, population, non-members, members, like teachable people, I guess, like you can share the gospel with. And so that was interesting. Like every area kind of had a different feel to it. Yeah, there's a lot of active members, and I think the goal right now is, since they split it, the goal is to have like maybe, I think 2 sets of missionaries per stake. I think that's the goal. I'm not 100% sure, but when I was on my mission, the goal was to have 1 set of missionaries in every stake. So you could be, the smallest stake was 6 wards, the largest one was 12. So between 6 and 12 wards, which is pretty okay. That may seem like a lot, but it was like my last area was 1 ward, and it was like the physical area was like 1.5 miles by 0.5 mile, and like that was our whole area, and that was 1 stake, and that was crazy. But so it just depends. The Ogden mission, when I was there were 105 stakes, and so I think they split it pretty evenly. So it's like now Logan and Ogden both have like 52 or 53, something like that. And so, but yeah, I'll just talk about when there was 105. So 105 stakes. There are 3 working temples. There's one in Logan, one in Brigham City, one in Ogden now. When I first got there, it was just the Logan one. The Brigham City one was like under construction. The Ogden one was like being renovated. And so, but now there are 3. I guess if you're in the Logan mission now, it's like Brigham City and Logan, and then there's Ogden and Bountiful in the Ogden mission. As far as like temple attendance, when I was there, like we could go to the temple once a month on our P day, so that was really, really cool. Near the end of my mission, they switched it to you need to bring an investigator or like a less active family that you're working on, just to like motivate us to like have our investigators and people we're teaching focused on going to the temple. So that was really, really cool too. It's so awesome to like do baptisms for the dead with your investigators, or like go through an endowment session with a less active family that are coming to reactivity. So cool. As far as like dominant other religions, there it was kind of all over the place. Like talked to some Catholics, Presbyterian, maybe like one or two Episcopalians, Lutherans. It was pretty good mix. Talked to some Jewish people. I think like Huntsville was probably the one that was like the most diverse. It was very interesting. Like there was a lot of, there were some people that were like Wiccan, which is like I didn't really even understand what it is, but it's kind of like paganism. Met some like pagan families, which was interesting. Yeah, especially in Huntsville, there was a lot of people that like didn't really feel like they needed religion. I guess all across the board, like the people that I talked to that were like super disinterested were like had that kind of notion that it was like, why do I need to go to church to be spiritual? Like that whole thing between like spirituality versus religion. Like I'm already spiritual. I can go to the mountains to pray, and so why do I need religion? And why do I need to go to a church building to worship God? And so that was interesting. There was quite a few people. But that believe that I'm going to talk to, for the most part, like both the less active and the non-member people that I either like contacted or like talked to, they're less active or non-member like for a reason. Most people like had like a specific experience that they like draw back on, like, oh, like I stopped going to church because a long time ago, like this happened, like, my bishop said something, or like, my neighbor said this, and like, that's why I stopped going, or like, that's why I don't, believe in you guys, sort of thing. And so there's a lot of that. And there was like, yeah, I feel like everybody, and also most of the people, it was pretty well impossible to like track in my mission because, first of all, you run into tons of active members, and it's totally, like, it can be effective, but most of the time we're like, elders, come on in, have some cookies, sit down, talk to us. And they're like, we're there for 45 minutes. Yeah, a lot of the people that like we kind of tracked it into were just, they tell us like, I had this experience, and like, they know why we're there. That's the first thing. I feel like there was only a couple times where it was like, who are you guys? Like, what are you doing? Like, are you with the government? I got that a couple times. Like, what are you doing here? Most of the people that I talked to knew who we were and what we were doing, So that was interesting. That was a change, something to get used to. I love member missionary work. And it was pretty fun in my mission because, there were so many members around. And so we actually did a couple different things. Like near the second half of my mission, we like got super big into that and saw some pretty amazing things. Yeah, so I'll just maybe talk about a few things. Like one thing that I thought was really interesting is that in pretty much everywhere that I was on my mission, like people knew their neighbors really, really well. And so like when we talked to people at dinner, that's another thing, like we had dinner appointments pretty much like every night, which was great. So pretty much every day, like we had dinners. And so at our dinner appointments, we would like ask the people we're having dinner with, like, so like, who do you know of, that question, like, who do you know who would benefit from the message of the restored gospel? And so quite a few times people are like, we don't know anybody. Like all of our friends are Mormon. They're all active. Like we don't know. And, and every now and again we get that whole thing like, we're in Utah. Everybody's already Mormon. And it's like, that is totally not true. But yeah, so like then we'd like after that, like if they say like, I don't know. And then we'd go in and say like, well, do you know your neighbors on either side? And then that would surprisingly get us like a lot of contacts. It would be, they'd be like, oh, well, yeah, that's the bishop next door. But like here, like these guys are active, but like next door to them are like, they don't come to church a whole lot. And like across the street, like they're not members. Cause like, yeah. And so that was one thing that I saw was really effective. Like people know their neighbors, like no matter what, like they know who's on their street, which is really interesting. Well, I guess it makes sense because like their neighborhood's pretty much their ward, so they know people. And so that was really, really effective. And it was so funny, like a couple of times I had like, we were like leaving and we were like standing on their porch and they were just like pointing to houses. Like right after they said, we don't know anybody who needs the gospel. We're like, well, who lives in that house? Who lives in that house? Who lives in that house? And like, as we go down the street, they'd say, oh, they're less active. Oh yeah, that's right. They are non-members, like all this stuff. And so it was really, really cool just to, almost be like, a super sleuth about it. Like, you don't know them yet, but you do know them, and just kind of got to dig it up from them and stuff. So that was really cool. As far as like the most effective way that I saw people come and stay in the church is actually laid out in Preach My Gospel, and you kind of have to tweak it a little bit, but it's that whole thing where, we really tried really, really hard to like, meet with the members and have them invite their friends to their home. And so when that happened, not as much as I would have wanted, but it happened fairly frequently. Like, we do like a really casual family home evening with like them and their friends and stuff. And that was really cool. We kind of started teaching them. But yeah, honestly, like the most effective conversions that I saw were when people invited their friends to meet with us, and because already they have like that support right there, and if there is, and so like we start teaching them, and really I feel like in those situations, like we didn't really do anything at all. It was like the friends that really like supported them, like went to church with them if we weren't able to. That was really, really the most effective, is when members brought their friends, or like, said, hey, this person was like asking me questions, and so let's just sit down with them and talk to them, just kind of get to know them a little bit, and then we'll start teaching, lesson one, like this is what we believe, and on and on and on. And so, but getting to that point where like the members would invite their friends was pretty tough sometimes in some areas. And so we did so much work with like getting the active members like comfortable with the idea of talking to other people about religion, because I feel like a lot of these people, less active or non-member, like they've been approached so many times. I feel like people in the neighborhood are probably like, they've said no, like they're probably sick of it, like I'm not going to ask them again, but really it's just like little things. So I served from 2012 to 2014, June 2012 to June 2014. My areas were, I served in Syracuse, Utah, Preston, Idaho, Huntsville, Utah, Logan, Utah at Utah State Campus, Malad, Idaho, and then South Ogden, Utah.